Pomendrika, Kuzazangpo, Kimcho, Salamat Pagi Abakaba, Sana Sande Bawana, Talofa, G'day, how are you? Just a quick note for anyone who wants to film in a river and they need a microphone and they're on their own. Just grab a shoelace and tie it in a couple of knots around your neck and attach your microphone. Isn't that good? Now, I'm going to jump in the river and cool down and we'll have a little discussion about water safety. Alright, actually, I'll try and walk and talk, leave my stuff there. Hopefully I won't drop my phone in the river or my microphone, and hopefully the microphone won't turn upside down. But let's give this a shot, people, hey? We'll film the river. Shit. Yeah, it's cold. Cold for like the first 20 seconds, but it's pretty warm afterwards. So here goes. Now obviously you should be, if you are swimming or even going up to your knees in a river, be mindful of the environment. There's a lot of rocks you can't see, or logs. For example, there's a log here. You probably see that in the river. There we go. Fallen trees, and even underneath. Always go with someone if you can, to keep an eye on you, especially with children. Hang on, let me just get under for a little while. Okay, let's dip under. The microphone's dry. Just look at that. Bubbles. Now, obviously you should only be swimming or dipping into the river during the daytime. At night time, you should never go swimming at night. Okay? So between sunrise and sunset, it's common sense, people. Look at my hair, it's bloody everywhere. So don't swim at night. Another thing, at night time, wherever you are in the bush, do not whistle at night. It's got to do with yowie Bigfoot creatures. Do not whistle at night time. Don't go close to a river or a lake or a swamp at night time. Especially don't swim at night time. Common sense. But added to that, there's a lot of First Nations peoples, tribal peoples, who speak of not only hominoid or human looking creatures like a Sasquatch or Yowie or Junjidi, Sabe, Bigfoot creature, Imjim, Towamari, Yeti. First of all, they can swim. These humans, they have been swimming by not only First Nations peoples, but other peoples, swimmers, campers, fishermen, wildlife photographers and filmmakers. They've seen Sasquatch, Yowie creatures actually swimming. They are a human, so they can swim, even if it's dog paddle. They can float and they can navigate. And you have to remember that these humans, they're a lot faster, a lot stronger, and a lot smarter than us humans. They've been around, they've potentially, I believe, been on this earth for, well, virtually millennia, hundreds of thousands of years. Sorry about the microphone if it's rustling. You know, whereas us modern humans, Homo sapiens, whether you believe we have evolved or not, we haven't been really here as long as these, I would call first humans, these Sasquatch Yowie creatures. But added to that, these other creatures in Australia, we call them, or the First Nations call them Bunyips, and they've been seen around swamp areas. And I was just talking to, a few months ago, a First Nations elder. I think his name was Bill or Bob, sorry about that if you're watching. And I've heard this time and time again. And there's even hundreds of reports of newspaper articles of bunyips, not only Sasquatch or even thylacines in the bush, in the Australian bush. So these bunyips potentially live in the river or the edges of the rivers and swamplands. So daytime is okay, but definitely a big no-no for nighttime. And do not whistle at night. Even during the day, be very mindful of whistling. Only whistle if you have to. If you're lost, if you need help, you can use one of the handheld metal or plastic whistles and give 3 blows. Okay, it's like 3 gunshots. That's a common usage of a person needing help. 3 whistle blows or 3 gunshots. Okay, it's common practice. But do not muck around and play around in the bush and whistle, especially at night time. But yeah, these bunyips, they're creatures that live in Australia, but even in African tribal peoples, there's a creature called the mammy water, and that again lives in the swamps. And the story goes, or hundreds of stories really, thousands, have been told, passed on from generation to generation about the mammy water, another hominoid being that lives in the rivers and swamps and lakes in Africa, especially the west coast of Africa, around, I believe it's Ghana. And even one of my ancestors, Mary Kingsley, she was an explorer in Western Africa and on the west coast, and she actually lived with cannibals in the 1800s. She lived with them for months on end, and she learned quite a lot about the tribal peoples of the land, the First Nations peoples in Africa. She didn't necessarily mention bunyips, but another ancestor, Charles Kingsley, who is an ancestor of mine, he wrote the book The Water Babies, and I've got a funny suspicion that what he was trying to speak about was actually being the title of The Water Babies, i.e. human babies that live in the water or are born in the water. Now they were very close relations, Mary and Charles. I think they were brother and sister or cousins or nephews. I don't know, I'm not too sure. But they are both direct lineage to me. And it's interesting that Charles spoke about the water babies, so perhaps Mary and Charles spoke together and Mary had the insight to explore, or perhaps Mary went first, went back to the UK, Scotland or England, wherever they were living, and Mary spoke to Charles, potentially, and then Charles wrote the book, The Water Babies. Now the Water Babies, it's written in the fictitious sense, okay, made up, but I suspect him being a priest, especially to the royal family of England, the only way he could get his writings published was to write The Water Babies and other books like A Boy in Grey and Westward Ho, was to write it in a fictitious sense for it to be published. So, and a lot of authors do that, or even modern day filmmakers. They'll write it in a fictitious sense, made up, or a fairy tale sense, but it's actually true ancestral knowledge. So just bear that in mind, people. Look into books like The Water Babies and even poetry, children's poetry. I suspect also that the Brothers Grimm, written by two German brothers, again in the 1800s or late 1700s, about Hansel and Gretel and how they were abandoned by children and told to fend for themselves in the bush. They were told to fend for themselves and they actually came across a witch. I suspect that witch was actually a Sasquatch or a Yowie. I believe there's a lot of parallels with regards to witches in the narratives, in the poetry or the children's literature. It's written fictitiously about a witch, but it's actually a Yowie or a Sasquatch, another hominoid being. So I suspect with many, many fairy tales, they're actually true stories. It's like ancestral knowledge passed on by tribal peoples, but that's actually true. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to keep this pretty simple. I'm going to enjoy my swim. Just be mindful when you go into a river of rocks and sunken trees and branches. Obviously, if you're in a river with crocodiles and alligators or other, you know, creatures that live in the water, do your homework first, piranhas or whatever. Yeah, but please be mindful that it's not only tribal knowledge and ancestral stories like the Mami Wata and like the Bunyip, which are true accounts passed on, but also ancestral narratives in the form of fictitious writings, poetry and children's literature, fairy tales and folklore, which is actually true accounts. It's only been altered fictitiously to cover the author, to cover the writer or the narrator, so they don't, you know, they aren't persecuted as such. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to jump out, get rid of my camera and microphone, and then jump back in. But you be good, you be safe in the outdoors and especially in the waters in summer. Don't drink too much alcohol. Always supervise your children, always inspect the river and do your homework. But it's an interesting note with regards to whether it's bunyips or Mami Wata or other hominoid beings. It's just that modern society doesn't speak of it nowadays in our Western culture. Okay, I'm trying to enlighten you people. All right, I'll leave it at that. You be good, you be safe, and do your bloody homework. I'll talk to you guys and girls later. See ya.